Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Mary LaCourciere. I'm the Chair of Education at the Nantucket Historical Association. And tonight we are very honored to actually have a conversation between two local Nantucketers who many of you will recognize. And we're going to talk about the history and the actual development of the Daffodil Weekend on Nantucket. Now, a lot of us think that it's about the parade and it's the cool cars and the funny hats. But there is so much more that has created this weekend to become a phenomenon on Nantucket. So our two speakers tonight, Mary Malavase, she's a member of the Nantucket Garden Club. She serves on the board of the American Daffodil Society as youth chairman and is accredited daffodil judge. Who knew there was such a thing? But that is the coolest thing. She's been a year-round resident for 48 years and has been involved with every daffodil season and show since its inception. Suzanne Daub is also with us tonight. They're going to have a conversation between the two of them. She's the editor of Yesterday's Island, Today's Nantucket, and Nantucket.net. She's been sharing her love of the island with her readers in print since 1982 and online since 1994. Daffodil season is her favorite, and so she's going to be chatting with Mary about the history of this incredible event. So off to Mary, the Daffodil Queen, and Suzanne Daub. Thank you for coming, and over to you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. Happy Daffy. And thanks for being here to talk with us about Nantucket daffodils and the show that started it all. So Mary, why don't you start by telling us how and when the Daffodil Show started?
Well, Daffodil was idea started in actually the fall of 1974. Jean MacAusland was president of the Nantucket Garden Club at that point and had a love of daffodils. She and her husband were summer residents, although she enjoyed being here in the spring just as much as the late fall. They had had an interest in obviously travel and food, so you'll see how that all comes together a little bit later. She and her husband Earl were the founders and editors of Gourmet magazine. Jean was a mentor to a lot of people. She was a wonderful mentor to me. She passed away in 2000 at the age of 82. So we've had many years of her education and helping to mentor. She also realized that in the springtime, a lot of the year-round Nantucketers that she had come to know and work with, their financial resources from the previous season had pretty much run out by the spring. So not only did she want to beautify Nantucket, which she loved, but she saw it as a way to maybe help with some economic impact to the island. Little did she know how much that would help so many people throughout the early spring.
That's so true. So what did she actually do? What action did she take to get the ball rolling, to get the daffodils started here?
Well, I think Jean knew that daffodils would really take to our soil. Daffodils like sandy soil with good drainage. They like watering, but they don't like their feet wet. And so that was conducive. She also knew we had a lot of deer and rabbits. So she realized that they didn't like daffodils. So here was something we could plant and would come back year after year, and our predators would not, make them go away. Really the first action that she took was in October of 1974. She announced, and we have an article from the Inquirer Mirror. Happily, a lot of these archives are now online thanks to the Inky and the Athenaeum. And she went to the Board of Selectmen at that point, is what it was called, known now as our Select Board, and said that she thought it would be a wonderful idea the following spring that we start engaging some public plantings for daffodils. So that being said, the Select Board in their December meeting announced that from April 28th to May 4th, 1974 would be considered Nantucket Daffodil Week. So that was how it all started. It was basically her vision of what she knew would take to our environment.
So there are over 1 million daffodils blooming on Nantucket now. The first planting was started by Jean, isn't that right?
Absolutely. And this is another wonderful old photograph from the Inquirer Mirror that a bunch of ladies, Jean is in that picture as well. She started with about 3,000 bulbs in the very beginning. And obviously every year it grew. The first plantings for public awareness were really done around the hospital. They were done at the airport. I know they did some at the island home. And it was sort of areas to get people excited. She obviously encouraged other people to start planting. So that was the first year. One of her dear friends, Ann Sanford, had a wonderful daffodil garden. So she encouraged, obviously, daffodil planting from all the members of the garden club. And by doing it, you know, in the fall, then she knew there'd be enough to then create the first flower show. So a lot of the bulbs Jean helped fund herself until things got going, and we had a flower show that brought in some bulbs. In 1997, there were additional plantings. I think there was 20,000 bulbs then. And then the large planting, which is the next photo you're going to see, was she invited the family of the Zandbergendines from Holland to come to Nantucket as her guest to look at the terrain. And that was when she ordered, believe it or not, 8 tons of daffodil bulbs. They all arrived in a truck, I do remember this, and Buddy Egan at Marine Home Center graciously said, oh, well, you can keep them here, and people would go there to pick up the bulbs. She also worked on organizing businesses, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, a lot of just friends to go out and start planting Milestone Road. So this is when the majority of the bulbs were planted. They started in pretty much 1977. She also had, which is unique, she had little yellow burgee flags made that looked like a little pennant that you would see on the back of a boat. And she had them made in such a way that they were put in the ground where you finished planting. So if you drove out on the Milestone Road and you saw a little flag in the ground, you took the flag out, you planted your bulbs that you had picked up, and you put the flag back in the ground, and the next group came out and continued. So it was definitely a community effort for sure.
That's great. And then plantings have continued, though, year after year, correct?
Absolutely. Not only the Garden Club, but other organizations. Jean, I actually helped Jean assist with planting of the Pulpus bike path that had been completed. That was around the time of the 25th Daffodil Flower Show. And we picked out varieties that would last, you know, several weeks. We've also completed, the Garden Club did the Cisco bike path. And the other organizations that have done wonderful efforts from great donations is PASCON. PASCON has a wonderful, since probably 2007 or 8, I believe, they have gotten donations in memory of people, and they've planted daffodil bulbs throughout the island. I would say they've probably done 50 to 60,000 bulbs in that time frame. We're also very lucky in that back in the early days, Dave Shampoo had arrived on the island for a job working for Walter Beinecke, and Mr. Beinecke was involved with, well, we need to plant some more bulbs. So he, you know, had Dave plant them, and to this day, Dave does all the planting for PASCON, and he's done the Garden Club planting. And I think single-handedly, he's probably been involved in 500,000 bulbs over the years. So we're very fortunate to have that expertise. Also at Sankaty Light, when the lighthouse was moved, the Sconset Trust went out and planted the bulbs that you see up there now that are blooming in the landscape, which is absolutely beautiful. The other thing that the Garden Club did back then, we realized the youth are our future. they would, every fall, buy daffodil bulbs that would be distributed to the school children. We've been lucky probably over the past 20 years or so that the 7th grade science class has worked it into their curriculum about classification because of the different divisions and types of bulbs. The students learn about that. They bag and label the bulbs and distribute them to the younger grades, and then the garden club takes them to other schools as well. Yes, basically that's how I got involved, and my children brought home bulbs and we planted them, and then of course we had to enter them in the show, and the rest is history.
That's great. Now, the first show was in 1975, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. The first show, and you will see here another picture from the Inquirer Mirror, is the ribbon cutting. The first show was held, actually it was May 2nd, 1975. And back then it was referred to as the Boys Club. It was done on a Friday. And the Boys Club was very generous, and you'll see they used whatever surface they could. I was not on the committee back then, but I happened to attend all these shows. And you'll see the pool tables. They covered them with a tablecloth and plastic. And then if you continue, you'll see they cleaned and washed pretty much every glass bottle they could find, from soda bottles to wine bottles to whatever. And that's what was used for the entries. The first show had 289 single stem entries. I think it was probably a warm season. Some of the varieties I'm seeing here are a little bit later when they would normally bloom. And then they also had a flower arrangement section. There again, pool tables work very well. They used every surface, and these were arrangements that garden club members did and the public did, to enter, and they ended up with over 30 arrangements. So it was quite lovely for people to see. And this was the very first one. And I said it was on a Friday. That's great. Friday afternoon.
Now, the American Daffodil Society has sanctions the Nantucket Daffodil Show, and they have from the very first show. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The American Daffodil Society is sort of the governing body that helps set the guidelines for what classes would be in a show. They also provide the training for people to become judges, and all follow the same standard. And they are an unbelievable organization. We'll talk a little bit about them later in terms of education. But they're the ones on Nantucket. They accredit the Daffodil Flower Show, and it's sponsored by the Nantucket Garden Club. So it's a wonderful collaboration between the two groups.
Now, the past few years, the Garden Club Daffodil Show has been at Bartlett Farm, but it's been in several different locations over the years, hasn't it?
Correct. Most currently Bartlett Farm, but after the Boys and Girls Club location, they moved to Legion Hall downtown. Thought it was a little bit easier for people who were in town to walk there. So that was used. Then it moved to the Harbor House. Many of you will remember there used to be a meeting house, sort of a small conference center at the Harbor House Hotel. So that was where the show was for several years. Then it moved across the street to the Gordon Folger, which became the Point Breeze. And for people now, it is the Nantucket Hotel. We were at that location for quite a few years on Easton Street. From there, went to the Coffin School for a few years, and then realized the show was getting too big for some of these venues. Bartlett Farm had just completed some expansion and a new greenhouse, and we approached Bartlett, a committee of us, and said, would you ever consider hosting the flower show? And they said, absolutely. So you'll see this is part of the entries at Bartlett. And it's just a wonderful location. It's got great
more entries.
Yeah.
More entries than the Boys Club, huh? How has the number of entries grown?
Well, it's interesting. You know, we had what 280 something at the first show, and we can now on a good year have over 1,000 single stem entries, which is kind of amazing to walk in and see. Most people don't realize there's so many different varieties.
And then you still do the arrangements, correct?
Absolutely. Adults. There's a picture of some of the adult arrangements. And of course, my favorite is, as always, the children's arrangements. This is really cute. I think the title was A Rainy Day on Main Street. So they all use their rain boots.
And the little cobblestone pictures underneath.
Absolutely. Who knew cobblestones were in that many colors? Yes, it's wonderful.
So
Absolutely wonderful.
not only have the number of entries grown, but the number of visitors to the show must have grown as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We also do have now, for people that don't have a space to grow, the American Daffodil Society has sanctioned and is continuing to work on a photography section in most shows. And it's very easy. I mean, people can take a photo of, you know, even between cell phones and iPads, it's very easy to, you know, take photographs now. The show in 2019, it's usually open on a Saturday afternoon and all day Sunday. There were over 1,300 visitors. So definitely we needed a bigger venue. And it's very interesting to encourage new people to come every year. It's just a wonderful event.
Now, in 1978, the first annual car show was held. Can you tell us about how that started?
Well, all of you who will have many on this webinar tonight will remember a wonderful Flint Ranny. There's Flint with his fire engine. He and his wife Corky and a couple of other Nantucketers decided, and Jean, I might add, and Jean, that now that Milestone Road was planted with these flowers that we needed a parade. Because how else were you going to see them if you didn't have a parade? So Corky and Flint and a few other people decided, let's organize a parade with Jean. So this is a picture of their fire engine, which was really, you know, fun. It always used to lead the parade with Hammy Hurd's fire engine. And then we had some other local people that, the next picture I think is kind of fun. People remember Bernie and Grace Grossman. There they were with their little car. And then the next picture is Jean herself. Part of the parade was the fact that Jean had this antique Rolls Royce. So she loved to parade. And there again, there she is in her own car. So that was kind of fun. And then because of her gourmet magazine background, after you've had a parade to sconce it, then you have to have a picnic. This is actually Jean's car at one of the picnics. And the next is my favorite photo. There she is passing out her picnics. Yeah. Really, excuse me, a lot of fun.
That's great.
A lot of fun. Obviously, it's not always a warm weather day. It was a little chilly. I remember that year it was a little chilly. We always had the parade on Saturday because the flower show back then for a while wasn't until Sunday and Monday because people were too busy.
Right. So by 1981, I understand there were 35 cars in the parade, and it grew from there.
It grew rather quickly, actually. By 1983, there were 80 cars. This was for the third parade, excuse me. This is the map. This was 1980. And then by the time a couple of years went by, in 1983, 80 cars had registered, but 40 more showed up that hadn't registered. And it got to the point where they said, wait a minute, this needs a little bit better management. So happily, the Chamber of Commerce decided they would assist, and they took over the management. Yes, the parade got so large, it sort of couldn't move because they kept running into each other. Yeah.
So then the chamber added some additional events, but the core,
Of recent years, absolutely. There was dog parades, there's hat parades, there's bicycle parades. I mean, it just ended up being a wonderful weekend.
yes, very full weekend. So this year was the second year that it was canceled due to pandemic restrictions.
Correct.
So when we realized that was going to happen, Mary and I got together to talk about possibly creating a virtual daffodil show to help keep the celebrations going.
Mhm.
So after a couple of Zoom meetings with Mary and other garden club members, my staff here at Nantucket Net built a virtual daffodil show at daffodilfestival.com. Garden club members wrote articles for an educational section. The NHA gave us photos from their 2018 and 2019 flower power parties, which were always held, well, for those 2 years, held the Friday of Daffy Weekend. So people can go online and look for photos of themselves dressed for the flower power. The chamber came on board by asking the Antique Car Parade participants to send in photos of the cars. And Nisha, the Nantucket Island Safe Harbor for Animals, is holding its Daffy Pet Parade or Pet Show at daffodilfestival.com. So until this Friday, April 30th, people anywhere are invited to go to that site, upload photos of daffodils they grew, daffodil arrangements they created, photos they took of daffodils, just like at the Nantucket Daffodil Show. They can also upload photos of their antique cars decorated with daffodils, photos of their daffodil picnics, selfies or shots of their families dressed Daffy. And you can enter photos of pets dressed up for Daffy in Nisha's Daffy Pet Show. And also, even if you don't upload a photo, you can vote in the People's Choice voting. And the voting will continue through mid-May.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful way for us to continue some of the traditions that have been put on hold.
Yeah. And maybe make some plans, take a look at the website, make some plans for 2022.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then the daffodils. There are an awful lot of different daffodils, Mary. How many varieties are there?
Well, we'll look at the next picture. Most people don't realize that there's 13 different divisions of daffodils. And I think that's what makes it so interesting when you come to the show. Most people see in their yards, you know, trumpet daffodils, which is a division 1, and large cups. But there are many different varieties, some of them that have multiple flowers on a stem, some of them, especially your division 6, they look like they're a little windblown. So that's what makes it interesting, in that some of these varieties grow at different times. So it's not necessarily you're going to see the same flowers depending on the weather. People say to me, well, I've been to the daffodil show, I don't need to go again. I go, yes, you do. Every year it changes based on the weather. So this is just a description of all the different varieties that people can easily get and plant here as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So different blooms in different weather and different times of the year are also different colors.
Absolutely. What you'll normally see early are all yellow. They're usually the earliest to bloom. And then you'll see some yellow and some orange. And I grow mostly pink and white. You can see some over here behind me. They're a little bit later. And then after that, they're all white. So that's why the weather affects the timing. If we have a mild winter, you'll see different colors than if we have a harsh winter. So it's great fun.
Dave Shampoo, we did an interview with him some years ago, and he told us that when he was working for Jean, that she once gave him a small handful of very tiny daffodil bulbs, said, be very careful with these. They were $1,200 a bulb. He planted them, they came up, and they were pink ones.
Yes, yes. Jean had an extensive garden, more than some of us. But she was our mentor. She was our mentor, and yeah.
We can all thank her for Daffy Fest.
Mhm.
When is the best time to plant bulbs to have daffodils to enter into the 2022 show?
Well, fall is the best time here when the ground temperature gets a little bit colder than the summer. They always say around 55 degrees, the temperature of the ground should be. But usually for me, I sort of have a self-imposed deadline of Halloween. I like to get all my bulbs in the ground by then, but we have such a mild fall that you can well plant into November here, and have wonderful results. It's not too early in June or July to start looking at bulb catalogs to order. Our garden shops here have done a really good job lately of ordering bulbs locally that do well here. I've helped them a bit, make sure we have varieties that first of all are affordable, and second of all would be a good grower. So yeah, everyone should plant in the fall.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have some resources on daffodilfestival.com about this, but
Mm-hmm.
there are so many resources. Where would you send people who want to find out more about that?
The main organization is the American Daffodil Society. Their website is very easy. It's daffodilusa.org. They have members from all around the world. It is a membership group. They've been around since 1954. They have many, many different websites. They have the main website, which is on the screen. They also have what's called DaffTube, which is a lot of videos and presentations on how to enter a show, how to do some hybridizing if you so are inclined. They also have an unbelievable website that's called Daff Live, which is a library. And you can go in there and see historical articles and all of those resources, including DaffSeek. DaffSeek is the one I think most people go into all the time. It is a website that helps you identify what your daffodils are in your yard. And you can go in and put in different characteristics of the daffodil, and it brings up a whole page of daffodil names and divisions and color codes. There's over 37,000 photos in that web page. It's amazing. They're sent in from, I think they have over 300 photographers that have exhibited from 23 different countries. So it's a wonderful, all those resources are free. If you decide to become a member, which I encourage you, that's why all of these websites, are maintained. It's a membership-based group. It's very reasonably priced. And they also publish what you're seeing now is this Daffodil Journal. It comes out 4 times a year. And it has wonderful tidbits, and there's always a column called For the Newcomer. And, it's a way to sort of read about things and have some questions answered. And then, of course, you can always call me. I'm happy to talk to people about daffodils anytime. Yes, so that's sort of the governing nonprofit, that helps us and helps educate us. They also, as I said before, create the judging schools for people to become judges and learn more about the flower that we love. We just love.
Now, people who might want to grow daffodils for the 2022 show, they can use DaffSeek to identify them, but if they have a little trouble, does the Garden Club help people when they drop them off?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we always help people at a flower show. And a lot of our judges come in ahead of time so that the judges are there as a resource, to help people. But I will say that, judges just want people to, enter and have fun. It's all about fun. I mean, this is something that you should enjoy doing as a hobby. I always said myself personally, I had time in April, with our busy work schedules, to have fun with daffodils, and I had time in October to plant. Come summertime, we're all a little busy with our jobs. The Nantucket Garden Club obviously is going to continue doing planting projects on the island. The Garden Club, of course, is a 501c3. We have on our website at the club a donate button where you can go in, and we always accept funds for our various projects, whether it be we have a grant program, we do scholarships to Nantucket High School graduates and beyond. We stay with them through college, which is a wonderful, wonderful resource. And then we also have, you can also donate there to the Daffodil Planting Fund as well. So there's a way to keep it going. My personal hope would be in the next few years, there are some areas on the Milestone Road, just based on age and some construction and things that have happened, that I'd like to, be able to replant some areas to get ready for our 50th flower show, which will be in a few years. So it's something to, look forward to. I will say this year, if you've been on the Milestone Road, you've noticed all the new the transit bus pull-off areas. They were all planted last year by the PASCON donations. So it brightened up what was new construction that all of us went, oh, what is that? So it really made it look attractive.
That's great. So it really is a community-wide effort.
And it's still going on, and hopefully it'll continue. And the fact that Jean's vision of beautifying the island with a flower that, comes back almost every year, so it's an investment. And I don't think she ever had the vision of the economic impact it would have on our little island, and welcoming people at a time of the year when, in the early and mid 70s, when, I first moved here, there wasn't much going on in April.
Yeah.
So it was her vision helped the island in many different ways.
And it's so beautiful after a long gray winter to see those bright pops of color everywhere you look. And they last for weeks. It's great.
Exactly. Yes. And I tell people, when you order bulbs, order what are called early season, mid-season, and late season. Because then you will have 5 or 6 weeks of bloom.
Which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's time for us to open it to Q&A.
Mary and Suzanne, thank you so much. I had absolutely no idea that not only is the history involved, but also the number of species, and it's just amazing. And I think the most amazing part is that Jean's passion has benefited the island, not only beautifying it, but as you said, Mary, economically, who would have known? So it just goes to show that we can all be involved and help our island in so many ways. So we have a couple questions. So if any of you have more questions, just put them in the Q&A. And as we've been talking about, it's really the start of the season, the flowers and this. But I have a question to ask you is, how long do these bulbs last? I mean, we see them, do they just keep multiplying and perpetuating, or do they need to be replanted from time?
Obviously, I think they will outlast us, hopefully. I have one particular daffodil that my great-grandmother planted around, my grandmother told me, around 1880, 1870 in Connecticut. And when I was a child, it was the only daffodil I ever knew. It's the only daffodil we had on there, and it looked like a little rough and tumble flower. And I dug some up from the family homestead and brought them here, and I've given them to people. And when I went to look at Daff Seek, to look at the history of this particular bulb, it was first recorded in 1680. So, I mean, it's obviously still here. It's going strong. I've given it to people. They now have it. So, I mean, depending on the variety, some of the, the fancy hybridized ones, they do multiply. Sometimes they multiply not as quickly. Mm-hmm. My key is people will say, well, all I've got is greens this year. I have no flowers. Well, maybe they need some space. If they've been in the ground for many years, you have to dig them up every so often and give them a little more room. So sometimes that can be a reason, and just give them more space. And look at a lot of them on the Milestone Road have been there, since the early 70s.
Wow, that's incredible. Yes, Suzanne?
When you dig them up, Mary, do you do that in the fall at the same time you would plant new bulbs?
You can. Sometimes I know people say it's easier to find where they are in May and June when they start to wither, and don't ever cut them back. Let them wither and die on their own. And what I've done is then at that point, maybe mid-June, 5 or 6 weeks after they really bloom, I will dig up a clump and put them in a pot. And then in the summertime, when they've totally withered, then I will just take the pot and dump them out, hose them off, let them dry in the sun, and then replant those in October, because then I'll probably give some away and replant some, because obviously we needed more room. Some people dig in the fall. It's just a matter of, I think, timing.
Okay, so I have a few questions about Jean. Could you say her last name? Someone's asking to repeat her last name.
Okay, it's Jean MacAusland, and it's M-A-C and then A-U-S-L-A-N-D. Jean, yes.
What happened to her garden? Is it still around?
The property was sold.
We hope the new owners have been good stewards of those.
I haven't been there in years.
So let's see. And Suzanne, someone's asking about the link for submissions for photos that you mentioned. So can you re-say that?
Sure, daffodilfestival.com.
Okay.
And you scroll down a bit and you'll see links to the Daffodil Show, the pet show, and the different sections where you can upload photos.
Okay. And one other good question, because we all assume we know what these are. Someone asked about PASCON, what that actually is.
Oh, it's some people would have known it years ago as hospice, but it's a palliative care group on the island that helps with patients and care. And obviously we love the organization, and they've helped so many Nantucketers. But they've always had some fundraising, and a lot of people will do it in memory of people, and then they'll plant, because daffodil is a sign of hope in life.
Nice. Nice. And then let's see, one other question here is, Mary, what varieties are in your garden? Or how many?
They're over my shoulder right now.
Yeah.
Actually, last year, and this is sort of a funny little story, during shutdown, happily the flowers were out, and I was sort of confined to, my computer at home. And what I did, just for me, is every time something would come up and bloom, I'd go out and I'd bring it in and I took a picture of it. And I actually created a little paperback book of my pictures. My daughter taught me how to label on my phone and put the name and the division and the color code. And then I said, what am I going to do with these? So I printed them. And I realized last year that I had over 216 varieties in my yard. Wow. So every year, it's like buying new shoes. Every year you have to go to the hybridizers and say, okay, I want 3 of those and 2 of those. And, you plant bulbs every year.
Great. That's awesome. Okay, so we have many notes of thank you to the two of you, and kudos to the Garden Club, and this fond memories that this festival has always brought to the island and to people coming over, and it's been a real source of joy for so many.
Yeah, I personally want to thank the NHA, Mary, for helping tonight. Suzanne, of course, has been a buddy of mine for a long time. Thank you, Suzanne. And also to Al and Mary Novissimo behind the scenes that are, we've all gotten pretty good with Zoom this year, I must say.
Yeah, and if it will go wrong, it will. Yeah, so yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to thank the NHA for doing this, and Mary for sharing her vast knowledge of daffodils. And I know this is only a little bit of what you know, but it's really been fun chatting with you and learning more.
You can always call me.
I will.
Yeah, we've got you on. We've all got the Nantucket phone book, so you're easy to find, the two of you.
Yes.
So, but I just wanted to say thank you to the two of you for sharing this information, and also just really illuminating us that it's not just about the picnic, like I said, but there's so much more to it. And I really look forward, as we all do, to the next in-person. It's going to be a huge blowout. I just know that, because we're all so excited to do this, and we'll all get prepared with our daffodils for next year. So thank you for you guys and all that you bring to us. We also want to thank our members, NHA members, for making programs like this possible. Your membership is really important to this organization, and it really helps to give us programs that are for the community and beyond. And if you'd like to become a member, just go to nha.org and all the information is there. We'd also like to thank our sponsors that Mary and Suzanne just said as well, to Novation Media, for all of their support, for their in recording and their technical support for these programs and making them possible. We look forward to seeing you guys at our next event, our next webinar. And if you have any questions, or just shoot us an email, or look their number up in the phone book. I probably shouldn't tell you that, but I'm not sharing that number. But anyway, so thank you guys so much for being with us tonight, and all you guys who are participating online. So look forward to seeing you in person. Okay.
Perfect.
Good night.
Good night.